to do as you sign in. My name is Cheryl Alberts, and as Terry said, I work with the Pesticide Safety Education Program office upstairs. We, the Pesticide Safety Office, provide education for individuals who are trying to obtain their certification and license for restricted use pesticides. The Department of Agriculture actually issues those licenses, but we provide the training, the manuals, the face-to-face interactions and training. So this is...
So Cheryl, you are all set, ready to go. It's recording, so you can start if you want.
Thank you, Terry. Okay. My name is Cheryl Alberts, and I'm very happy to be here with you tonight. We're going to have, our program is in 3 parts tonight. The first and the third are the shortest, and the second is the longest. And for the second part, we may take even a couple of breaks. The first part is about awareness of pesticide safety. The second is safety and following label directions, all those handouts there. And the third is on integrated pest management, or IPM. And I should say, welcome to our off-site students who are sitting in. If you have a question, I can't see you, but if you have a question, just let me know by speaking loudly, and we'll try to get your questions answered. The same for everybody else here. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to talk about awareness, safety and labeling, and IPM. We'll have a couple of exercises and some handouts, and when we get to part 3 and weeds, I actually got these weed pamphlets, so don't let me forget to give those to you. Okay. Something must be off here. It worked earlier. Okay. There we go. So, how many of you are new to Master Gardeners? This didn't want to advance here. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So that was like 3 or 4 hands. New to Master Gardeners. Okay. And how many of you have heard of IPM, or Integrated Pest Management? Okay. Well, our challenge tonight is to help each other. I certainly am not an expert, but I hope that we can learn from each other and share with each other and have a good time. I know there's a lot of knowledge in this room, and look forward to hearing your ideas as well as just learning from each other. Okay. I don't know what pesticides to use, and I don't know the right dosage, and that's not really why I'm here tonight. We don't give those kinds of recommendations. Maybe you all do when you're Master Gardeners. But we want to get the IPM word out there and how integrated pest management can be helpful to people. I'm not a Master Gardener, but I come from a long family of gardeners. My family has a big garden every year. My mom is 84, and last year she planted 40 tomato plants. She planted them and staked them and hoed them and watered them and canned them and made juice from them. I had maybe 12 plants. So we can all still learn from each other no matter what stage of gardening we're in. Okay. We're going to talk about risk. Terry mentioned earlier that we're going to pay attention to labels and what we wear when we handle pesticides. And we're going to try to reduce the risk factor when we handle pesticides, no matter how safe they're supposed to be, or if they're natural or organic. They all carry some risk. So we'll talk about that. Integrated pest management is an approach to pest control. It uses 4 main ways. And I should say that your handout is for part 2 mostly, so this isn't going to be in your handout. But this is just kind of general. IPM uses biological, cultural, physical, and chemical controls. And we want to emphasize the chemical control is used kind of as a last resort. We don't want to give people the idea that the chemicals are a silver bullet for any problem. We may not even have a problem. IPM uses a lot of education. It identifies what you're dealing with. You have to know what you're dealing with. And as master gardeners, I'll bet you get a lot of phone calls where people don't know what they're dealing with, and you'll have to ask a lot of questions to try to get at what the problem is. Okay. Overall, we probably take pesticides a little too casually or lightly. They've certainly been around a long time, and often they're packaged in pretty boxes, so we think, that it's something nice in there. And we'll talk about some incidents on what happens when you don't follow the label directions. And we'll do that right now. And as we're going through these, be thinking of examples that you could share of your own, because I think we probably all know of something that's happened. These happened to occur in California. We're not picking on California, but they happened there. Okay, 2 kids are playing. And what do you think they're playing with here? The aerosol can that is a can of pesticide. So the baby ends up with a shiny face and laughing, and the mom comes in and sees one child spraying the other, and she bathes the child and takes the baby to medical care, and this one ends all very good and fine. So why do you think that happened, this particular incident? Why would one child spray the other in the face with a spray? It was not kept out of reach of children like it probably should have been. Yeah. It's got some activity and motion to it. Improper storage, and children should never have access to pesticides. This is a little more serious. A resident applied aluminum phosphide pellets to a squirrel hole next to the garage and added water. If you remember the first of this year, I think it was about January 2nd in Amarillo, the aluminum phosphide was in the news, where someone had obtained on the black market, most likely, this product and put it under the home to get rid of something. The fumes started to bother people in the house, so someone went to wash away the aluminum phosphide underneath. And when someone arrived at 5 o'clock in the morning, that person found a house full of very sick people. And 4 children died from that. Aluminum phosphide is highly toxic, and when you add water to it, it kind of activates it. So you can imagine what happened here. This product can explode, start fires, and as I mentioned, kill people. In Nebraska, there was supposed to have been an incident where somebody put aluminum phosphide into a bucket of water and dumped it down the storm sewer as well. So know what you're dealing with. I guess is the take-home message here. Aluminum phosphide is a restricted use pesticide. Where it poured it down the storm sewer? I don't know. I mean, it exploded, so I don't know if it destroyed the street or what. Did anybody else hear about that? It could have been some time ago, but the one in Amarillo was just early this year. Now we're going to move on to some lighter cases. A lot of these have to do with people doing yard work, apparently in the summertime, and having some refreshment while they work in the yard. This man drinks alcohol while spraying pesticide on his plants on a hot day. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, the upshot of this, while a man is doing yard work and drinks alcohol, what he actually is drinking is pesticide from a measuring cup. He spit it out, vomited, and could not explain why the ready-to-use product was in the cup, or why he drank from a measuring cup. So obviously you have to pay attention. This man was in the shower and sees ants in the bathroom. So he sets off the bug bomb and goes ahead and has his shower as the bug bomb is going off. The comment is, why is it always a man? Yeah, so he had symptoms. Obviously did not read the directions. Late at night, this time it's a woman, has a soft drink bottle in her shed at night and drinks from it. It tasted bad. She thought it had gone bad. Her daughter later told her that a gardener friend had given her weed killer. It was labeled as grass killer, but it was not obvious in the dark. You'll hear a lot of these incidents where people pour pesticides and other products into pop bottles or drinking water bottles. I guess because they're handy and they're everywhere. Yeah, well, it was labeled, this one was labeled and she didn't see it in the dark. Okay, and here is a case where a man wants to borrow bleach from another individual, goes over and the individual wants to give him the whole bottle, but the neighbor won't take the whole bottle. He just wants a little bit, so he pours it into his water bottle. And then gets a phone call and walks off and leaving the child, who has a habit of drinking out of bottles, to drink some bleach. The child got sick and was taken to the hospital. Okay, this is one of the more unusual ones, I think. This man buys insecticide to kill rats. Insecticide to kill rats. The man planned to mix the powder with water, and when he opened it, the powder must have gotten onto his face. He developed symptoms, and probably with his same hands that he used to open the container, tried to make himself sick, and he got sicker, and his wife took him for medical treatment. So there's a lot going on with this one where he obviously was not using the right product and not using it safely and not thinking things through. This person doesn't read the label on an aerosol insecticide, stands on a stool to spray up in the air toward ants 3 to 4 feet away, and got sick a few hours later. Had this person read the label, he or she would have said that it said to hold the can 1 foot from the surface, not 3 to 4 feet, and not to spray in the air. It was probably a crack and crevice type product. So all of these, you can just imagine that the people did not read what they were using. Okay, you can imagine what happens here. It's time to start grilling, and there's some ants in the grill from last year, or ants in the grill. So he treats the grill with ant repellent, and then later cooks his hamburgers on it and gets sick. And he was sick all night. Yeah, I think we can all think of better ways to do things. Okay, man takes a bathroom break while spraying for ants, and the child gets a hold of the sprayer and sprays the toaster. And again, the parent thought that the sprayer was inaccessible, or that the child couldn't spray it, but obviously did. So this is just a few things that can happen from California. Does anybody have any examples of things that they've heard about or seen or experienced that they would like to share? Okay, we have someone here, and I think rather than repeat the story, I'm just going to let you talk into this mic.
I took a call from a guy who was trying to kill a rose bush, and he had cut it back so that it had no foliage, and he doused the roots and what was left of the stems with pure glyphosate, and it didn't kill it. And he wanted me to tell him what to do to kill the rose bush. And I told him that he had created a situation, and he had used the glyphosate improperly and against label instructions, and that he needed to pay attention to what was going on with that sort of thing, that it was a foliar product, that it had to be applied to the foliage. And as long as he was digging around in the roots, why didn't he just dig the damn thing up?
Okay. Did your client think that was good advice?
He was angry with me that I didn't think that he had followed a good procedure, and he hung up.
Okay. But sometimes you got to be firm. Did you have an example?
I knew a man who had slugs in his soil, and decided to use arsenic to kill them. And after he put the arsenic on the ground, he got down on his hands and knees and rubbed it into the soil with his bare hands. And we saw him for arsenic poisoning.
Oh dear. Oh.
He survived, but he had some serious symptoms.
Okay. Well, it can happen, and people just don't think. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell one on kind of myself. This is my dog Lady from many, many years ago. Lady, and those of you who were here last year know the story of Lady, my dog. She was a sale barn dog, which means there was a box of puppies at the sale barn, and I went home with one. She was a good little dog, and she was always up for an adventure, out exploring. She one time got into a porcupine. So We had to take her to the vet for that. But when she wasn't exploring, she liked to lay next to the house, on the south side especially, because that's where the sun beat down on the house. And she laid in my mom's flowers, and even my mom didn't say anything about Lady laying in the flowers. But one day I said, something is wrong with that dog. She doesn't look right. And she was kind of unsteady and probably kind of glassy and just kind of odd and still. And so I said, I'm going to take her to the vet. And so I took her to the vet, probably the same one who pulled the quills out of her nose when she got into the porcupine. But the vet said, what's that smell? I smell something with this dog. And I said, well, gee, I don't know. You mean when?
Yep. So they can talk.
Okay.
So you have them take it off.
Okay. Okay. The vet said, what's that smell? I smell something on this dog. And I said, gee, I don't know. Dad sprinkled some Thimet around the house. And he said, well, that's it. That's what I smell. Thimet smells, it's an insecticide, a field insecticide, and it smells kind of like rotten cabbage. And my dad's theory was, if he sprinkled this around the house, we wouldn't have bugs in the house. But we didn't have bugs in the house anyway, but this was to make sure they wouldn't come in. And he sprinkled it liberally. And so there was my dog laying in this field insecticide. And the vet said she probably got her skin irritated, and she probably licked her skin. So not only did she get it absorbed through her skin, but she probably ingested it orally as well. So I had no idea that my dog was so sick from this insecticide. But the vet gave her a bath. He gave her some activated charcoal to get it out of her system. He gave her some, I think it was atropine. And in the end, he did save her, but he didn't know if he could. And I was just stunned that my dog could get so sick from an insecticide. So we had the dog for many happy years after that, and that veterinarian ranked very high on my list. So, okay. From our stories from California and from what the gentleman here said, what can we learn from all of these situations as we wrap up part 1 here on awareness? Read labels. It's the first one. Okay, you ought to always keep products like this out of reach of children. Never leave the pesticides unattended. Probably want to keep some poison control information handy. Pesticides in the original containers. So those are a few things to take away from this first section. Okay, I'm going to set up now for part 2, which is our long part. So does anybody have any comments? If you do, I've got this mobile mic here that I can pass around while I'm setting up for part 2. Let's see. Oops. Okay. Part 2, and we may be taking a couple of breaks. This is where we're going to do our label exercise. But still, we'll try to have you out of here by or before 9 o'clock. Okay, as I mentioned, our office pesticide safety is right upstairs on 3rd floor, and we work with Department of Ag to help individuals get certified for restricted use pesticide application and handling. And we really emphasize safety. Our aim is to protect human health, protect the environment, and ensure the economic well-being for agriculture in Nebraska, as well as lawns and gardens. We certify a lot of types of individuals, those who do fumigating, as well as your lawn and garden applicators, people who treat telephone poles and all kinds of things. Anything that is going to have a pest, we can help provide the education for that. So we're going to talk about pesticides, the labels, the risks and poisoning, and protecting people, pets, and the environment. So what do you think a pest is? Yeah, and this is where you use the handout for part 2. What is a pest? Is it a mosquito? Is it a mouse? Is it a snake? It's something you don't want. And maybe what you don't want is, maybe I do want that thing. Maybe I like snakes and they're gonna get rid of rodents. So what is a pest for you may not be a pest for me. A pest is an organism with characteristics that we don't want around. And it varies from person to person. It could harm our livelihoods, our property, our environment. Could even be an annoying person. I know a few pests. Okay, and here are some examples of pests. These are tent caterpillars. I haven't seen any around for a while, but one summer, decades ago, they were just thick. And I would go take a stick and knock those nests down because I think they would be too hard to penetrate with anything. They were just really strong nests. Okay, here is a Japanese knotweed, or it's a knotweed anyway, and it was actually here on campus. Knotweed is one of the noxious weeds. We have 12 noxious weeds in Nebraska, which I'll give you your handouts after a while. It was sold as an ornamental, as were 2 other ornamentals that became noxious weeds in Nebraska. And this is Brent Meyer, who is the Lancaster County Weed Superintendent. If you ever get a chance to hear Brent talk, he's really good and he makes weeds very, very interesting. And that's where I got these brochures from. Okay, we got some cute little raccoons, but they're not so cute when they get into your house. And here we have, I think it's cedar apple rust, which I never saw it before I came down to southeast Nebraska. I'm from central Nebraska. We didn't have that there as far as I know. Okay, and here is Dennis Ferraro with one of his many snakes. If you go to the state fair and a lot of public events, you'll see Dennis with his snakes. And he obviously is fond of it, and we're not so sure about his observer there. Okay, now here's a multicolored Asian lady beetle. How many of you have had experience with the lady beetle? Okay. So was it a good experience, or what kind of experience? That's what you're supposed to do. Very good. Okay, these are noted for this M or W on their heads, whichever way you look at it. These were brought in, I believe, the 70s or 80s as a biological control. They eat aphids. And they can, they seek warmth in the wintertime, and so they could end up in your house. Lots of them could end up in your house. And as I think it's Laura said, you don't want to squash these because they will smell and they'll have a yellowish juice in them. So you want to vacuum them up. And you want to vacuum them up and not just leave them because they could attract carpet beetles. The record swarm for the Asian lady beetle was 100,000, it said. I don't know how they counted. And they do not infest wood, destroy fabrics, eat food, or damage other property. They're not known to sting or carry disease, but they do bite. And I remember thinking, ladybugs aren't supposed to bite. Well, I was thinking of the one that was here first. Okay, now we're going to go into some laws and regulations, part of this discussion. FIFRA is the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, enacted in 1947 to protect people and the environment by the controlled use of pesticides. So this involved registration, classification, labeling, distribution, use, disposal, and other topics. In Nebraska, the Nebraska Department of Agriculture enacts the Nebraska Pesticide Act, which is how we carry out the FIFRA. It was in 1993. So what is a pesticide? Do you know what CIDE means? It means to kill. And pesticides control organisms by physically, chemically, or biologically interfering with their metabolism or other normal behavior. And these are some, I think, probably older type of pesticides. You can tell by the rust on the can there that's, I think it's Paris green for potato bugs. Quick death, insecticide, and disinfectant. Okay, these are all pesticides, bleaches, pine sol, paints, microbials, and botanicals, like neem oil. Are you familiar with neem oil? Because I'm not that familiar with it. It is from a tree or a shrub from India. And it is, I'm told or read, that it's the most important of the commercially available neem products for organic farming and medicines. Okay, this pretty umbrella here tells about some of the various sides that we have: fungicides, pesticides, molluscicides, insecticides, rodenticides, and herbicides. Okay, they work in many ways. Like fungicides, for example, can be protective or curant. Curative means they are active against pathogens already in the plant, and preventative is to keep the pathogen from getting into the plant. And of course, there's herbicides are selective, non-selective, contact, and systemic. So how do we know what a product will do? we have to, oops, I forgot insecticides here. Various insecticides work in various ways here. Okay. So we know what a pesticide will do by reading the label, and that's why reading the label is very important. The label is the law. And so you, this gentleman here was exactly right when you told your caller you didn't perhaps read the directions on what the product was for when he was trying to kill his rosebush. The label is a federally registered and legal document, and they are approved by EPA. And so that's why you want to read the label. Now, I know it's not real exciting reading, and the print is really small, but everything, almost everything you would want to know is on that label. And we have some sample labels that we'll look at later. You should always read the label before you buy. If you have to buy, I think we've all got stuff out in the garage or the shed that we kind of let pile up. It's just easier to go buy some new product rather than to go through our garage. That might mean we have to clean it out. So you want to buy only if you have to. Read before you buy, before you mix, before you apply, when you store it, and before disposing of it. And read the labels each time you buy. If you buy a product now and before the summer's over, you need to go buy some more, read the label again, because the formulations change and the labels can change even in just a few months. The safety data sheets contain more details about the product and the active ingredients. These are usually found online, and I believe if you end up going to the doctor, they'll probably want to have this or have access to this. So this has a lot of information. I don't know what the vet did with my dog lady, because I don't know if they had safety data sheets back then. Okay, and as I mentioned, we work with NDA for the licensing and certification of restricted use pesticides. You might be interested in this one. Number 3, homeowners are liable for misuse of pesticides on their property. So that's another reason homeowners should exercise caution. General use pesticide or restricted use. General use, anybody can buy and use, and restricted, you need to have this little card here. Okay, here's some sample labels for a couple of products, and we see the signal words here: caution and warning. And in big print, keep out of reach of children. And we have an active ingredient. It's bifenthrin. Thank you. And this one is bifenthrin. All pesticides pose risks. Okay. Organic does not necessarily mean safe, and natural doesn't necessarily mean safe. And on the same vein, synthetic does not necessarily mean highly toxic. Everything is a poison if it's used in the great enough amount, or in some cases a small amount. This individual, he must have been kind of a philosopher. Paracelsus was his name. All substances are poisons. There is none which is not a poison. The right dose differentiates a poison from a remedy. And there's some more quotes by him if you look up his name on the internet. Brainy quote with his name, and you'll get some good ones. Okay. So what we're all about here is to reduce the risk of exposure or risk to ourselves. And labels help us manage the risk. So the formula is very simple. Toxicity times exposure equals the risk. Now, we can't do anything about the toxicity of the product because that's in its formulation, but we can do something about the exposure. So that's what how we can control the variable here in this formula. And we usually get injured by pesticides in 3 ways. We inhale it, it gets on our skin, or it gets in our mouth. So you can imagine how children usually get into it and how it gets into their systems by the mouth. And with adults or applicators, how would you think? Does it usually get into their system? Absorbed, yeah, through the skin or through the eyes. Okay, so again, that formula, toxicity times exposure equals risk, and we want to reduce the exposure. And of course, get the right product for the job. Okay. So the risks here, we have acute and chronic exposure to pesticides. What's the difference? What is acute? Yep, it happens right away. Acute happens right away, and chronic occurs over a long period of time. And so that's why you always want to wear your protective gear, because it can save you either way. Now, I had a handout for you guys. Sorry about that. I'm going to just pass these back. Okay. Now, I know the answers are in your handout, so don't look, but the print is so tiny you maybe can't see it anyway. Okay. Here we have our model, and we're going to try to pick out what areas are most susceptible to pesticide absorption. We'll use the forearm as kind of the baseline as a 1.0. So compared to the forearm, what do you think are the most susceptible areas of the body to being having some pesticide absorption? Chest, lungs, okay. And if we are just going to stay on the outside using our forearm as the baseline. Hands, okay. Hands actually, if you want to jot these down, is a 1.6. And okay, the ball of the foot is a 1.6. Even though we should be wearing leather shoes, or not leather shoes, but rubber shoes. Yeah, no leather or no canvas. Okay. The most susceptible areas are the head is a 3.7, and the groin is an 11.8. Yep. Okay, so here, if you want to jot those down, the scalp, I think I said 3.7. Your ear canal actually is a 5.4. Well, this is 1.3 on the palm of your hand. Okay, your groin area is almost 12. Your abdomen is 2.1. Your forehead is 4.2. So when we talk about wearing the protective personal equipment, PPE, there's a good reason for that. You know, it's to keep your body protected from being an absorption site for these pesticides. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about the agricultural health study, which is kind of the benchmark for pesticide applicators. The study has been going since 1993, and it is involved over 89,000 applicators and their spouses in Iowa and North Carolina. This is a pretty well-respected study. They're still putting out results. They looked at how genetic factors affect the population, you know, how exposure to pesticides affect the health. And the collaborators are the National Cancer Institute, the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, EPA, and National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. So, pretty legitimate there. So they looked at the risk factors, you know, your diet, your habits, your pesticide use, knowing that not everybody responds to things in the same way. Some people are predisposed to certain diseases. So beginning in 2012, these are some of the findings, and I think that's in your handout. Overall, farmers are pretty healthy. They do have a higher risk for developing some cancers, especially prostate cancer, which now doesn't surprise you. Rotenone and paraquat, an insecticide and herbicide, are linked to increased use of developing Parkinson's. Gloves matter, and the right kind of gloves matter. Accidental high pesticide exposure events may affect health in later life. Diabetes and thyroid disease risk increase with organochlorine chemicals. And I had that organochlorine are like DDT, which I don't think you can get anymore. Even pesticide poisoning may increase the depression of applicators' wives. That's a curious one. Whether, you know, they get some absorption too, or whether it's just the condition of the spouse. Protective gloves and workplace hygiene reduce risk of Parkinson's. And high exposure spills are more likely to experience molecular changes on DNA. That was just out earlier this year. And I think your handout says 16, but that should be 2017. So the bottom line from all of this is using your personal protective equipment can reduce exposure and risk. And good handling practices reduce exposure. Good cleanup helps reduce risk to your family. If you've been out working and with some pesticides, take your shoes or boots off at the front door. Don't track into the house. That residue can get into the house. And we'll talk a little bit later here about doing some laundry. Here are examples of the protective equipment. Goggles. Oh, we should back up a minute. Personal protective equipment, we'll go to the next slide here. This fellow has his long sleeve shirt, his chemical resistant gloves, his long pants, probably got socks on, and he's got his rubber boots. So he's pretty well protected. This is the minimum. Maybe he's even got some goggles on under there. So if the label says to wear goggles, wear goggles. If it says to wear a respirator, wear a respirator. Now, these respirators have cartridges that can actually expire, which I didn't know until not too long ago. And you have to store them and, just watch pay attention to the expiration date. And if you use these, like at the end of the day, wash your goggles and your respirator out, and your gloves. And all gloves are not the same. Sometimes the label will actually say what mill or thickness to use, so pay attention to that. You never want to use your dishwashing gloves for pesticides. You want to use unlined gloves if there's any liquid, it doesn't stick to the lining and then get on your skin.
If you're wearing rubber galoshes, should those be rinsed off in the yard?
Yes, rubber galoshes, rinse off in the yard. I would, where you apply the pesticide, or at least, kind of hold them up over the grass. Well, yeah. But that's probably a good idea. I would think that product could probably eat through the rubber eventually. Okay, here, I'm going to give you this.
Just a question. Reading this yesterday, I was shocked about the percentages, about the genital areas being 11%, close to 12%. Why is that? Where your neck and ears are not covered here. And a lot of times I'll have maybe 3/4 length shirt on, but have a little gloves on, but have a little bit of skin shown there.
Mm-hmm.
But why is that part most at risk?
I would say because it's a very soft and delicate part of your body. Your head and your arms, the skin is tougher, I would say, and a lot of times there's cancers in the most vulnerable parts of your body, ovarian cancer and prostate cancers. I think because they're very active parts of your body. This is just my thinking out loud, which is never a good thing. But that's why you want to wear, if it says wear a chemical resistant apron, you want to put that on because to protect your whole body. I don't see Terry around, but she may have some additional insight. We can ask her when she comes back. Okay. Even when you do the laundry, and you want to do the laundry in the hottest water you have, in the most water you have, maybe a challenge with these new washing machines that are water saving. You may have to wash your clothes twice. But you want to be careful and handle the clothes with the same protective gloves that you would wear handling the product. And of course, if the clothes are soaked, don't even try to wash them. Just throw them away. Put them in a plastic bag and throw them away. It's not worth it. So if you wash your clothes twice with these high efficiency machines with low water, also then rinse the washing machine out on empty with hot water afterwards to help eliminate any residues. Okay. All right. Are there any further questions on this? Because the next part we're going to go into is kind of long, and we've been going for about an hour now. So if you want to stand up and stretch, we can do that. I'm going to get a little water here. But does anybody have any questions? Okay. Resume. Somebody had asked the question before our break about why is the genital area more susceptible than to like an exposed part of your body. And just in a quick look, it just says that these areas are more susceptible and they're higher absorbing. So that's the short answer, and there's probably a lot more to it.
I wonder if it has to do with how many pores, skin pores, that if the sweat comes out, maybe it absorbs back in through your pores. Probably some parts of your body have more pores than others.
That's right. And there was a study on if you sweat while applying pesticides, does that increase or decrease the absorption? Because you might think the sweat's a barrier, or you might think that your pores open more. And it's the latter. The pores open more, and so more can get inside you while you're sweating.
Really, you're still on.
They'll be on the whole time with you.
All right. So how about indoor air quality in our homes? Do you know of any studies that talk about air quality and health inside?
There likely has been. I would just say, read your product label. Like if it says 1 foot, don't spray 3 to 4 feet. And don't track in with your shoes. Those are just a couple of the things that, from my perspective, that you could do. I mean, obviously, if you have a dust type of pesticide, take your clothes off outside and shake them off outside and leave them outside until you launder them. And don't launder it with the family laundry.
Elizabeth is talking. Can you repeat your question, Elizabeth? Tell her to repeat the question.
Can you repeat the question, Elizabeth?
Can you repeat your question again?
I don't think she knows that she has
There you go.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move into some more technical aspects of pesticides and labels and caution words. How many of you are familiar with the term LD50? A fair number of you are, and that's good. I kind of have to go by what my notes say because I don't have this kind of background. But LD50, lethal dose 50, is the dose that will kill 50% of a test sample population. And rats have been used to test LD50 in the past. I don't know if they still are. Your LD50 is given in milligrams per kilogram, milligrams of substance per kilogram of body weight. And the whole point of LD50, correct me if this is not right, tells about the exposure or how much it will take to kill you. So you want to know the LD50 so that you can put the right cautionary words, or the manufacturer can put the right cautionary words on the product label. Okay. Okay, milligrams per kilogram. A milligram is just this very, very small amount, and 30,000 milligrams make an ounce. A small shot glass is about an ounce, so that gives you an idea of how many milligrams it would have. A kilogram is 2.2 pounds, and so it would take, it's a little over 68 kilograms to make 150 pounds. Okay, this is all the background. So, what would it take to kill a 150-pound person? Okay, here's our background again. Here's, oh, actually it's a 140-pound person. Okay, we'll take the example of boric acid, which has an LD50 of 10,000 milligrams per kilogram, so quite a bit. And according to the formulation, it would take 22 ounces of boric acid to kill this 140-pound person. Okay, so that's quite a bit. That's over a pound. What about rotenone, on the other hand? Its LD50 is quite a bit lower, 132 to 1,500. So to kill this 140-pound person would take, it could take under an ounce to 3 ounces of rotenone. So obviously, the rotenone is more dangerous because it takes less to kill. So the lower the LD50, the more dangerous it is. Okay, so manufacturers use the LD50 to come up with their signal words, the caution, warning, or danger. And this is the toxicity to the user, not to the pest. So the caution is over 1,000 milligrams per kilogram. Warning is 50 to 1,000, and danger is less than 50. So danger, of course, is the most dangerous. Here is a listing of several substances, including sugar, and how toxic they are. So it take quite a bit of sugar to kill these rats, 50% of the rats. And even it shows glyphosate has a low caution signal word. I'd still be pretty careful. It's lower than salt. Malathion should be safer than aspirin. So you can see that these products, the one that's most toxic on this list is botulism, the food poisoning. You hear about people dying from food poisoning. Dioxin is another pretty bad one. So that's just kind of a quick overview of LD50 and how they come up with those signal words based on the toxicity of the product. There's a couple more. The signal words, caution, warning, danger, and danger, poison. I think we just have 3 though. Here's something relatively new. With the symbols, the number of angles, the more angles, the more dangerous the product is. So the upside down triangle is for caution, the diamond is for warning, and danger is the octagon. And I guess the skull and crossbones are still super dangerous. Okay, and the toxicity to your eyes and skin go from slight to severe. Okay. We're going to get into our pesticide labels now, and here are a couple of examples. Again, they're in these pretty boxes. And let's see. Okay, we got a couple more things to go through before we get to these. I guess these are a little out of order. Here we've got our signal words: caution, danger, warning, and danger. Okay, and here it gives you an idea of the quantity for danger. It's just a few drops to a teaspoon. When I was talking about aluminum phosphide a while ago, I read that it's like 50 drops per million parts that is toxic. So 50 drops to a million. That's pretty low. Okay. This is also in your handout, but if you want to just guess some before you look. Some symptoms of pesticide poisoning. Nausea, good. What about headache, blurry eyes, irritated throat, headache? Any other ideas? Rash? Yep, all those: vomiting, sweating, nervousness, weakness, difficulty breathing, reduced muscle coordination, rapid pulse. Okay, and we'll get into some chronic ones here: cancer, allergies, birth defects, and organ damage from long-term exposure. So you want to protect yourself, protect others, and protect the environment and non-targets. Here are some non-targets. And you know what we mean by non-target? It's something you don't intend to affect with your pesticide. So it could, grapevines are very susceptible to, I think, 2,4-D and maybe some other products. Kids, water, livestock, and fish. They can all be non-targets. And we'll talk a little bit later about how to protect those. So for example, you can leave a buffer zone around your sensitive areas so you don't like plant right up to the waterway there. Reduce drift, runoff, and root uptake. Be careful of pollinators, bees, the time of day that you spray and what you spray. Okay, restricted entry interval. Okay, who knows what the restricted entry interval, the REI?
How long we have to wait before you can go in there? Different depending on the use of the.
Right, it's the waiting period before you go back in once an area has been treated. And my husband has strict orders to keep the dog off the grass after our lawn company's been there. Okay, environmental hazards. You can see that there's some product that's washed off of a yard or a driveway or something, and it's going to go right down into the storm sewer. Okay. Pesticides can move by drift through the air, from overspraying, and from runoff. So the residues can burn or damage sensitive crops, cause a lot of complications with organic farmers, reduce the beneficial plant and animals, contribute to pesticide resistance. You hear a lot about certain weeds that are resistant to a lot of herbicides. I think there's 6 weeds now that field weeds are known to be resistant to various products that used to work great. Okay. The U.S. Geological Survey reports finding glyphosate and other herbicides in water, and California reports finding pyrethroids in surface waters. Okay. Storm water is the water or snow, melted snow that goes down the storm sewer. And what's one way of protecting what goes down into the storm sewer? Have you seen these little signs or caps that they put on and they say, oh, shoot. Here, this, it says, usually no dumping, drains to, and then it'll say a creek or a lake, or probably wouldn't be a lake, but a waterway. We've got one of these right outside our house. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Just a word about organic crops, such as grapes. They cannot have synthetic pesticides and remain organically certified. This includes pesticide drift. And if you may have some acreage people who call you with questions, the acreage owners may decide they want to plant a few grapes and make their wine. So if it's organic, it can't have any pesticide, even if it's accidental. Pyrethroids. In 2013, EPA created an initiative to minimize pyrethroid movement. And mostly what it sounds like they did is they made some changes to the label. So again, you have to read the label to know what is acceptable and safe. Pay attention to the weather and your sprinkler schedules to avoid runoff into the waterways and storm sewers. As lady said here, keep your products for your lawn on your lawn and don't allow them to get onto the sidewalk where it can go into the storm sewer. So just another warning or friendly warning here about drift. Okay, so you want to protect the environment and watch the how you apply and your products. The finer the mist or what you spray, the more it's going to travel. And medium to coarse size droplets will resist drifting. High temperatures and low relative humidity encourage drifting. And drift potential is lowest at winds from 3 to 10 miles an hour. In Nebraska, that's very rare. So here are some things that affect the droplet size or the affect drift. We've got droplet size, the wind speed, the distance from the nozzle to the target. If you're spraying way up here and your target's way down here, it's more likely to drift. Temperature and humidity and the soil conditions. So here's a word. Smaller droplets increase drift, stronger winds increase, greater distance increases, high temperatures and low relative humidity increase drift, and wet soil. I think it's just not going to go down and be absorbed. Is to drift. It wets. Yeah, it increases vapor drift. Yes, wet soil somehow does not drift.
It increases volatilization because if the soil is wet, the sun hits it, then if the herbicide is on the soil, then it's going to go up into the air. And if you apply herbicide at a high temperature, above 85 degrees, if it's going to get above 85 degrees the day you spray, then the plant can take that up, but it will, in trying to keep itself cool, will volatilize the herbicide and it will still drift. And it can, 2,4-D can drift miles. I don't see how in the world a grower of grapes can ever assure that you're not going to have herbicide drift.
Okay, so that was a good explanation of when the you spray the herbicide and the temperature warms up, the plant will volatilize or kind of give off that herbicide, and then it can get into the atmosphere. Okay. Okay, sorry.
So the question here was how soil conditions affect drift, and there was a question as to how would that work. And another one of the master gardeners was talking about the off-gassing effect as temperatures increased, that a product would continue to off-gas if it wasn't readily absorbed into the soil or the plant material. Does that cover it, John?
Okay.
So could you identify what the ideal conditions are for it? For applying? Besides not using it. Yeah.
Rule of thumb is never in Nebraska.
I mean, that's.
So are you applying it to soil or?
So I missed parts of the question, so.
And I have a farmer that comes over and puts his junk on my farm ground. And I guess I'd like to be able to monitor it and know when he shouldn't be doing it and when he should. So that's the
Well,
question of
so.
when is it appropriate?
So that's really the hard part. So if you are living on an acreage and you have a farmer that lives next door to you, which obviously most people who live on acreage do have a farmer of some kind, or farmland, agricultural land that is next to you, there's really not, unless you physically go and talk to that farmer and
No,
say,
he's my farmer.
well, so you're cash renting the land out. Okay. Then you have the right to go and say, please make sure that you're trying to be as environmentally friendly as you can. However, there's a caveat to that, and that's just the same as anybody working in a public landscape that is on a time crunch that has to get something done. It could be raining or windy for 3 weeks in a row in Nebraska. And you only have a specific amount of time to apply specific pesticides or herbicides or whatever. And they just have to do it. So there are times when they're probably actually not applying it at that ideal time. That is when they actually will probably increase the valve jet to make that droplet bigger. When that droplet is bigger, then it's not going to drift as far when it's blowing. If he's being conscious, he's probably already doing that. So
is it like 85 degrees or below and 10 miles wind speed and below? Or?
Well, it depends on what it is. And that's where the label will come in. I mean, there are some that you can apply when it's warmer outside than others. 2,4-D is one that volatilizes at a relatively medium, like 80 degrees is when you really should stop doing 2,4-D, because it can start volatilizing very easily. But there are other ones that don't. So that's really where that label comes in handy, and you are really being very cognizant of what you are applying when you're applying it, weather conditions, all that kind of stuff. So like I said, it's maybe. I don't know. Who knows?
I do have to say, my nephew is a farmer, and he was saying, you know, we take so many precautions, and our equipment is state of the art. It is absolutely amazing. As he explained it to me, when they do a turn at the end, and the equipment immediately stops spraying the chemicals so they don't double spray it. He said, you need to look at these urban people and their green lawns because they don't read the labels and they're not applying it correctly. And it's resulting in a lot of pollution into our stream.
We were talking about drift as an atmospheric phenomenon. Can you have drift through the soil? Is that called drift too?
That would be leaching.
That's leaching. Okay, different word.
It would be a different word, but kind of same concept.
But I was thinking about systemic insecticide, merit, for instance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yep, you can leach things through the soil. Tordon actually will leach from plant to plant. So if you have two plants next to each other, and you're trying to kill one shrubby plant, and those roots are actually crossed under the soil, you could potentially have death of the plant that you want to keep if you are applying Tordon. That has happened. So you really do need to be very cognizant of that also. So, yep, you can have collateral damage. And Tordon, you can buy ready to use over-the-counter Tordon. Tordon used to be restricted only, and you can actually go and buy it over the counter now. So, you know, yeah, it can happen. And like I said, and like Cheryl's been saying, read the label. I mean, that is your contract with both the EPA. So EPA, the federal government looks at it, and the state looks at it too. There are some chemicals that are registered in Colorado that you cannot use in Nebraska. So each state there then also has another level of checking out.
And I was just going to add in, I'm also an owner and also work for the USDA as a crop scout. And so with the 100% on, the farmers are the recipients of the training, and the lion's share of them have restricted use pesticide permits.
And commercial people.
Yeah, and the 21st century sprayer is already using large droplet size, low pressure, low nozzles to reduce drift. But of course, if you've got vines and that sort of thing, as I'm out in the country, you know, scouting and doing my thing, a lot of times if I go by vineyards, I see signs that says, hey, drift management, don't drift here. And then of course there's Drift Watch. If you have pollinators and that sort of thing, to get on the Drift Watch site and mark your land in the Drift Watch system.
Drift Watch only works for commercial though, not for private people. So if you're growing grapes for yourself, you can't apply it to, you can't go on Drift Watch.
Pollinators, and if you're growing grapes to sell, that's what I'm talking about.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Some good points.
Did that
here.
help?
Yes. Okay. Thanks everybody for contributing to the discussion. Okay. And here are some ways to minimize drift and runoff. And just as we were talking about, using larger droplet size, adding drift control agents to the products, keep it below 10 miles an hour if you can, and lower pressures while spraying close to the surface. And then there's a series of things to protect water pesticide runoff in waters. And again, don't apply to wet soils or frozen soils. Gentleman mentioned driftwatch.org, and this is a volunteer communication tool for commercial growers designed to protect organic crops and gardens, bees, and fish from inadvertent pesticide drift. The DriftWatch users sign up each year so their operation is shown on a map, which we'll see. The idea is that pesticide applicators look at the map and know what areas to avoid or where to be extra careful. The growers are not required to post their operations, so there could be a lot more sites than are on the list. And DriftWatch is not a substitute for any state or regulatory requirements. And okay, so fieldwatch.com is a place where applicators can sign up, and they then are notified when new DriftWatch operators sign up. So you get a notice every time somebody new signs up. DriftWatch is a nonprofit company that offers mapping and communication tools. This is to help a successful coexistence of specialty producers and your traditional large-scale farmers. I think, as Terry said, communication is very important. You do need to talk to people about, you know, your situations, and I think most of the time people try to help each other out. But as she said, there's often a very small window of when farmers can actually get in there and treat their fields. But, nobody wants trouble. So these field watch and drift watch and even bee check is a beehive registry to help protect hives and bees from inadvertent pesticides. Okay, so here is a drift watch map, which anybody can see. You don't have to be registered to go look at this. These point where individuals have marked their beehives. I think that's the yellow bee. G is, I think, grapes. F is fruits. V is vegetables. There's nursery crops, orchard crops. And so when you are online, click on one of these pin drops and the producer name, type of operation, and contact information will come up. And here we have specialty certified organic Doug Dittman at Branched Oak Farm at Raymond. So that's the kind of information that will come up when you click on one of those pin drops. Okay. So you want to emphasize to put the right pesticide on at the right time, under the right conditions, and at the right place using the right equipment. Everything has to be right. Here is a EPA bee advisory box. This is an effort to help protect pollinators. The bee advisory box will appear on, or it appears on pesticide labels for products that contain imidacloprid, dinotefrin, clothianidin, and I'm not pronouncing that right, and various products. So it encourages applicators to minimize exposures to bees while they're foraging. And I think bees are out most during the daytime, so if you apply these products toward the evening or night. The neonic labels. EPA changed the labeling in 2014 to minimize exposure to bees using the pollinator protection box and to highlight safety measures to protect pollinators. And here is the symbol on protecting bees that you'll see on these products. Okay, and here's just the bees. This is Bee Check in Nebraska. This has probably changed since this was printed off. But as you can see, you can select for any products, fish, fruits, grapes, and just that will come up if you click on what you want from the list. So this is the bee hives in Nebraska for people who registered. Again, you don't have to register. Some people may not want others to know that they've got a specialty operation going. Okay, so back to some safety. Never transport pesticides in the passenger space of a closed vehicle. Allow passengers or pets to ride with pesticides or transport food with pesticides. If pesticide spills, you want to do the 3 C's, control, contain, and clean up. If the jug falls over, it's get it upright and then think about cleaning it up. And here's some kitty litter, trash bag, your protective clothing, a shovel, and get that all swept up and thrown away. And if you are so fortunate as to have a special place to keep your pesticides, that's really great. You can, if you don't have a special shed, then maybe even mark off a place in your garage or other place where you can store these products. Okay, and again, keep those products in their original container. Here we have some stories about people drinking paraquat, which is this blue product. It's not blueberry Kool-Aid or anything. It's highly poisonous. In the US, paraquat or gramaxamone is an RUP. It's dyed blue to kind of let people know that this is supposed to be not something that you drink. It's supposed to have an odor carrying agent to it so that you know that it's not something you're supposed to get in your system. And it's supposed to have an agent to cause vomiting. It is highly toxic, and from what I've read, if you drink it, you usually will die a very painful death. And here we have some instances of 2 charged after a man drinks the herbicide. And actually there are other instances here with involving children. This pesticide, paraquat, was in a Gatorade container. Here's a toddler who drank it. Here is a bottle in his father's work truck. Here's somebody, an adult, who drank, somehow got paraquat in his own coffee. And who knows what this Pepsi sold by strangers was about. So usually 7 to 14 days after you ingest this, it's over. Okay, so you want to make sure if you have any poisonous pesticides that nobody can get to them and use them for untoward purposes. Okay, and what do we have here? Okay, why do we have a hole in the pesticide container? So it can't be reused. So you want to triple rinse your pesticide containers, and these are probably more for large scale farming or commercial, but you want to triple rinse those and put the rinsate on what you would normally put the product on, and then you want to puncture those containers and recycle them if possible. And one of your handouts has, yours is black and white, but it's this trifold folder, trifold brochure that tells about hazardous waste collections. So you want to keep this handy. The next one is April 29th. There's one in April, May, June, 2 in June, 1 in September. And it looks like these do take herbicides and pesticides and insecticides. A lot of times these collections won't take those, but these will. Okay. And if you want to take down this site, it's the National Pesticide Information Center. National Pesticide Information Center. They have a lot of good information. We use that center information a lot. The URL is npic.orst for Oregon State .edu. So npic.orst.edu. And they have a lot of good information. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go into the label exercise. But again, it's been kind of a long, we started with the LD50s and we've covered a lot of ground since then. So if you want to stand up and stretch and then get into groups of like 4 to do the label exercise. Let's see. And I have been wanting to get the light on. Do you know how to turn the lights on in here? Okay. Yeah, and pick one.
Oh, we did.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to assume that I'm back on. Yep, I'm back on. Okay, so for the restricted entry interval, if it doesn't say on the label, you wait until the product is dry. Okay, so let's, about 10 after, let's see how far we get with our label exercise. Oh, come on. I heard all the men were doing all the things wrong on people were applying pesticide. Yeah. Pick one label and work on it together and answer the question. You're welcome. Environmental. Fish. Pass that to Senator Guy. Thank you. Mhm. Mhm.
Something about for eating or drinking or chewing gum, or even
Mhm. Yeah, or smoking. You know, from the product to the mouth.
It is amazing what I mean, they do a nice job of putting this stuff on here to read it. Now, this thing actual files or did you, with all the internet, you can just look up something.
Yeah. Yeah, that, and I don't know that these are the whole thing. I think these are just part. Of course, these might be just over the counter, you know, your garden spray. So it could be complete, but on some of the big containers, you know, they may run 50 pages. I do not.
Russian thistles? Are they, you must, that's like the same thing as called Russian.
I think they're different. I think Nebraska has like 10 thistles.
I go out and I chop them down and try to dig them out when they start to have the heads. But then after I did that, the next day in the paper, there was an article, a thistle very close to what this looks like is a good thistle for birds and pollinators. I didn't realize that until I basically tried to spend a half a day wiping them out.
Yeah.
By shovel. Cut the heads off. Well, same thing, then I'll try to just dig them up and just lay them down. But then the next day there was something, and they do look alike. Because one is kind of, I gotta remember now, one is silvery on the one side.
Mm.
Well, I think that.
Yeah. Yep. Why don't we go ahead and take that one then? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't have enough for everybody. Okay, let's gather around again and let's see how we did on our exercise. Okay. Okay. I think a lot of you must have picked the same label. A lot of you picked Weed Be Gone. Is that right? Okay. Oh, the biggest print. Okay. So was it Weed Be Gone Max or Weed Be Gone with crabgrass control? Crabgrass, okay. Weed Be Gone Max, okay. Which groups had Weed Be Gone Max? Okay. Oh, okay. All right, let's start with this group, and would you be willing to tell us what is the signal word on Weed Be Gone concentrate for crabgrass? Is this for crabgrass?
Weeds, not lawns. That's crabgrass.
Okay, not
We
crabgrass.
did this one.
Weed Be Gone Max.
Yes.
Concentrate.
Do-
Okay. What is the signal word?
Warning.
Okay. And active ingredient?
Salt. All kinds of salts.
So,
We didn't want
okay.
to write all them down. No, I couldn't even see them. Salt, salt, salt.
Okay. Who else had Weed Be Gone just concentrate, right?
The first one, weeds. That's 2,4-D.
2,4-D?
Yeah.
Keep the young ones with the eyes. They can read all them little words.
Okay.
It's just spelled out.
Because you have to. Right there.
Okay, and go ahead. And what protective clothing do you have? And everybody see if you have the same thing.
Goggles for mixing.
Okay, is that all it said? Okay, if that's all it says, what else are we going to use for our PPE? What's the standard fare?
Rubber boots, gloves and boots.
Mm-hmm. And what about our long sleeve shirt,
sleeves,
our long pants?
and not smoking.
Don't smoke because
Goes
you're
in.
taking it right up to your mouth.
Yep.
And shoes and socks.
Well, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but not leather.
But not leather or canvas. Okay. And any restricted entry
After
level?
it's dried, you can walk on it.
Did it say that?
No, it just says after it's dried. You can
Okay.
mow.
And environmental hazards?
Yes.
And what are a couple?
Oh, I just answered yes.
Okay.
You were writing them down?
There's a list here. There's like
Go
10
ahead.
of them.
Yeah.
Uh,
List 2 or 3.
Drifter runoff may adversely affect non-target plants. Do not apply this product through any type of irrigation system. Do not contaminate water used for irrigation or domestic purposes. There's a few of them. Keep going, or
Okay, that's good.
okay, there's a lot. more.
Okay. And how about somebody else answer how to dispose of the pesticide? Did it say?
Yeah, it says if empty, do not reuse the container and to place in trash. So we kind of just added the triple rinse
Mhm.
and the holes, even though it didn't really say it on the label. And then if it was partially filled, to get rid of it at your local solid waste agency.
Mhm.
Or they also had a phone number 1-800-CLEANUP. You could call and get disposal instructions.
Okay. So were you all surprised at what all was on that label once you started reading it? Or no? Okay. Okay. How about you? Is this standard fare?
Standard fare, but I'll read the instructions a little better next time.
Okay. Do you have anything to add? Okay. All right, let's go to another group just quickly. Who had something besides Weed Be Gone, Max? Somebody did.
Did you guys do the crab control? Crabgrass control?
Okay. Okay, signal word.
Caution.
Okay, a couple active ingredients.
2,4-D and quinquirac.
Okay.
Is that close? Okay.
Okay, and protective clothing.
The whole gamut. Long sleeve shirt, goggles, pants, socks, shoes, rubber gloves, and protective eyewear.
Okay, and the REI.
Dry, when the area is dry after it's been applied.
Okay, environmental hazards.
The only thing we seemed to be able to find was that it's toxic to fish, so it needed to stay out of areas where it could come in contact with water or have runoff into any kind of source of water.
And how about disposing and of the pesticide in the container?
Well, it says the pesticide do not put down regular drains, but take to a solid waste disposal. And you'd obviously want to triple rinse the container again, but if it's empty, you could throw it in the trash and choose to recycle.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so how about you all? You had all down?
Yeah, I was interested in all down because it is for use in organic gardening. And one would think that it would be the safest, and it is the most, it is the label word is danger. So it is the most, the worst of the bunch as far as being toxic, and it is vinegar and citric acid from, so oranges are toxic here. And yeah, it could be lemons or limes. No, it is not okra, Terry. If it was okra, everything would be delicious. The protective clothing that they talk about are goggles, face shields, safety glasses for mixing and for changing hoses. The REI is not stated, so apparently it's when it is, the product is dry. Environmental hazards, use on land, not water, keep out of storm drains, drainage dishes, gutters, and surface water. And it has some complicated instructions for cleaning out your equipment. And for getting rid of the stuff, you have to either use it up or take it to a waste disposal facility. And for cleaning out the container, you triple rinse. And there are more instructions about how to keep it out of the groundwater, and dispose of the container by sending it to the dump or punching a hole in it, and preferably to recycle it. But it also has some messages here about not using spray equipment that has metal nozzles, and don't get it on any of your lawn furniture or anything that you have that's metal, because it will corrode it. So it sounded like I'd really want to go out and get a couple gallons of this stuff.
Okay. Okay, and you've just reinforced what we talked about earlier, that natural and organic does not necessarily mean safe.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
So you buy vinegar from the store,
It's
they
not,
don't tell you you have to do all
but
this
it's not
stuff.
the same thing. If this vinegar is a higher concentration. You as a chemist should know that.
Vinegar is 5%, this
Yeah.
is 23%.
Right.
That's only 4 times more.
Only,
Really?
only 4
Really?
times more. You as a chemist should know this.
I'm laughing at it. So whether you use this for your weeds or to clean your coffee pot.
You can do both. Two
But
for
it'll
one.
corrode your coffee pot.
Yeah. Only if it's not, if it's glass, it'll be fine.
Okay, how about back here? Which one did you pick? The Weed Be Gone Max. Okay. And so did you have what the others had? Were any surprises? Okay. And you had which one?
We need the crabgrass control too, like.
Okay. So any surprises? Did you have anything else?
Well, actually, I accidentally did the other one.
Okay.
That's a kill crabgrass, and it had a higher concentration
You wanna
of
hand this to
something in
him?
it. So the one without the crabgrass killer is actually more dangerous and had a higher concentration of something in it, because the signal word is warning on that one. So
And this is the Weed Be Gone?
this is a Weed Be Gone that doesn't control crabgrass.
Okay.
So the
It's-
signal on that is warning instead of just caution.
Okay.
No, 2,4-D is lower than crabgrass.
Or was
It's
it,
the 2,4-D.
which was it, which was ours, was it dicamba, was that the ours?
Quick
No.
black.
Then, oh,
Was it, the quick
So you've got the concentrate. Yeah, so your 2,4-D should be higher
okay.
than this one. Right, is it 1.5 and it's point,
So is the deal that, are you gonna dilute this one, or are you putting it on in a higher concentration as well?
good question.
I didn't read that far.
Okay, the question is, and maybe we'll need some help here, Terry, on the concentrate. So even though the active ingredient is higher, when you dilute it, is it going to be lower?
You should, what it is, diluted is what it should be, what this number is.
Okay,
I don't know, let's ask the chemist. That number is what it is diluted, correct? The percentage of chemical that's active ingredient. If it's a concentrate, that's what it is at the diluted rate, not as at the concentrate rate.
Always dilute it, and then the amount you put on.
Is that 13%? Yeah, yeah.
okay,
The rate is, even though it's concentrate, it's what it is, the active ingredient when it's diluted.
That's what the warning is for, but I don't think you're putting it on your line.
Ready to use. Yeah. Right.
Okay, but the bottom line is that the concentrate active ingredient is once it's diluted. It's not straight, it's not the concentrate.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
This is what it is diluted when you dilute it. I think so.
Is it? It's 0.2.
I'll have to look it up and let you guys know next week.
Okay.
So
Okay, those are good points. Good questions.
was there 3 or 4 of them?
Let's see, this group's already gone. 1, 2, 5.
But did you have 3 labels or 4 labels?
4 labels.
So what one did you not do yet?
We didn't do, I think it was just the regular all down.
He did the all down.
Did he do all down concentrate? Was yours all down concentrate? Okay, so it was all down regular. Okay. Okay, I think we've got the pretty general idea here of how you read those labels and what you can find on the labels. And I guess the question is still out. We're not sure if the active ingredient is the diluted or not. We think it is. So the active ingredient listed, is it diluted on the label?
The active ingredient doesn't change by diluting it. It's just concentration of it. I don't understand that. The label lists what it is before you dilute it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Before you dilute.
And the instructions they give tell you how much to spread it around once you dilute it.
Okay. So, but the question is the concentrate says it's 13% for the 240, and then not the ready to use says it's like what, 2%. So if it's 13%, that's what's in the bottle.
Right.
Right, before you actually dilute it.
Right.
So when you dilute it, then it goes down to the 2% active ingredient.
Well, if it depends on the dial. The 2% might mean just diluting it 2 parts to 100, and so it's 13 times 2%. So it's different than that.
You and your chemist.
Well, I guess my original question was, one had caution, one had warning. Was it a warning because when you're mixing it up, you're exposed to more acid because it's so concentrated, or is it after you've already mixed it up still?
It doesn't change whether you dilute it. That's related to the lethal doses and how toxic it is. And so if it's warning and you dilute it, it might take a little bit more to cause that toxic effect because you diluted it, but it's still dangerous. More dangerous than one to take caution. Okay.
You want to repeat that for the Omaha people? So the question was why is there a caution on the undiluted and the warning on the diluted and warning on the concentrates? And nope, they're talking weed be gone. So the answer is that it's still a warning, and it might not, and it's the lethal dose of what it is, but it will probably be a little bit less, but it will still have a lethal dose of a warning. Did I summarize it
because the warning and the caution is related to the chemical itself, not to how it's diluted. But of course, in common sense says the more you dilute it, the less hazardous it's going to be.
And the concentrate has chemicals in it that the ready to use did not. So that could have been why it was changing part of that warning from danger, from caution to warning. So never thought you'd have so much fun learning about labels, did you? Oh, what was your question?
My question had to do with protocol. When you go into Earl May and you want to buy a container of something, you have to peel back. Is it okay to peel that back in the store and read it before you buy it?
Yes, peel it back and read it before you walk out of that store.
Okay, so if you choose not to buy it once you peel it back, it's okay to put it back?
Yeah, it's got tape on it. Just stick it right back in. They do it all the time. Yep. Or if you're in Walmart or Home Depot or Menards or any of those places where you're not going to get any service, definitely. So, because they're not going to know. So we're teaching you to know, and definitely go and peel that back and read it. So you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to use that product.
Do any of the stores have magnifying glasses hanging on their shelves?
Yes. I've seen it at Home Depot. Yep. So, or you can bring your own.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks for participating in that exercise. I hope it was helpful. I thought it was pretty interesting. Oops. Oh, I thought it was. And these are going to turn these back on. Okay. We are now entering into phase 3 and the last part of tonight's program on pesticide safety, and this is actually about integrated pest management. So maybe this is what you've been waiting for all night. Okay. We're going to talk about the integrated pest management: physical, biological, cultural, and chemical. And we've already touched on some of these biological with those lady beetle aphids, and chemical we've talked about. So we'll talk more about cultural and physical now. So the alternatives to using pesticides, again, to reinforce the idea that pesticides should not be your first line of defense. In this picture, we have a lady beetle larva eating aphids. This is a biological control. And something to consider is obviously it's going to take a while for this lady beetle to eat a lot of aphids. So sometimes there's too much of a lag time before biological control can be effective. IPM is an effective and environmentally sensitive approach to pest management using all appropriate management options. So in Nebraska, we have to consider the economics of pest control, or what would happen if there weren't pest control. So losing the crop is not going to be an option. And if avoiding chemical use is going to cost you the crop, that's not a very viable option. So quickly, some examples of physical or mechanical means are trapping pests and pulling weeds. I love to pull weeds in the summer and feel like I've done something. I throw my piles out in the alley, let the cars run them over. Biological, we have like our lady beetle aphid. Cultural, rotating crops. And chemical, we know, is pesticides. Okay, and it includes a lot of education, including, as I mentioned early on, you need to know what you or your client is dealing with. Okay, so I handed out some pamphlets and brochures, and I'm sorry I didn't have enough of the brochure to go, the pamphlet to go around, but everybody, yeah, everybody should have gotten the noxious weed pamphlet, and then most of you got this little weed booklet. And if you didn't get the weed booklet, maybe you can talk somebody into giving you theirs. I'm sorry I didn't have enough. Okay, so what do we have here? Anybody know? What kind of thistle is this? It's a musk thistle. Okay, and Nebraska has 12 noxious weeds, and usually they are on rangeland or cropland, or they could be troublesome to acreages. This is one of the longest running noxious weeds in our state. It is prolific and has protective spines and seeds, as do a lot of the thistles. Each plant could have up to 100 heads. And anybody want to venture a guess as to how many seeds one plant could produce? 20,000. Okay. There's always been one thistle or another, it seems like, on the noxious weed list. You've got your brochure, so you know what the others are. I'm not sure the finches like musk thistle, but there are thistles that the birds and pollinators do like. It's interesting that at least 3 of the state's noxious weeds started out as ornamentals. That means you had to buy them, and they sold very well because they grew very well and fast. And anybody want to take a guess as to what the 3 noxious weeds are that started out as ornamentals? Purple loosestrife is one. The Japanese knotweed, is that in your brochure too? Okay. Okay, yes. And salt cedar is the third. And I heard that salt cedar could use up to 200 gallons of water a day. The chemist is saying yes. So, okay, now this is not a very good picture of musk thistle, but I have seen like this. And you don't want to, I mean, you got to do something, but you don't want to go out there very bad. Okay, and here are the knotweeds. The Japanese crossed with the giant and ended up with the Bohemian. And there is our county weed superintendent. And I understand that sometimes they had to talk really hard to get the nurseries to stop selling these plants. Okay. Okay, so that's, anybody have any questions on noxious weeds or weeds in general? I think you could, and if the county has to come and spray, you'll get billed for it. So. Now, I heard the county weed superintendent talk a couple of weeks ago, and it's really an interesting presentation, and he emphasized how much he wants to work with people. So if you have any questions, don't be afraid to give him a call. His name is Brent Meyer. He's at Lancaster County Weed Superintendent. Okay. So IPM IPM includes habitat modification. So here we have somebody fixing a water leak so that it doesn't get a moisture problem and attract pests. A habitat modification might be getting rid of tall grasses next to a garden to prevent hiding places for insects and small animals. Sanitation. This is what I was doing here the other day. You can clean up your old leaves, get rid of areas that might harbor insects or disease organisms. I would call this a physical means of IPM. And it can include exclusion, where you put a cage around your plant so that rabbits and other wildlife can't get to it. You can put a collar around your plants to keep out beetles and cutworms. Mechanical controls, we have a sort of trap here. Beer traps can get slugs or nails. And here is another biological control, and I like this picture. We have a catalpa worm that has wasp larvae feeding on it. Okay, this looks like our custodian's duster. Biological controls uses other organisms like parasites, insects, or disease to keep a population in check, like the lady beetles we talked about earlier. Praying mantids eat a lot of insects, including their own. If you release a bunch of these at the beginning of summer, you might have one at the end. Cultural control, planting date, rotating crops, disease resistant. I know I try to rotate my tomatoes around in my garden spot, but I think some years I end up planting tomatoes on the same spot, and so far I still have tomatoes, but one year I might not. And of course, the chemical controls. Pesticides are tools, but not cure-alls. And I know you all know that, but you may have to convince your callers of that too. So here is the IPM process. Start with monitoring for pests using sticky traps or visual inspections, so you know what you're dealing with. Accurate identification of pests, again, so you know what you're dealing with, using appropriate reference materials such as your extension publications, your NEB guides, and your ECs. Great resources. Determine the pest level threshold that requires some action. If you see just a couple of things out there, does that mean you have a problem? Probably not. When does it become a problem? That's what you have to decide, and when do you need to do something about it? Select your control tactic. Always start with the non-toxic or the lower toxic first, and you know, if you have to go out there and pick some things off individual and throw them in a can of soapy water. Yep. Evaluate the effectiveness of what your process has been. Keep records and keep monitoring, adjust as needed, and educate everyone involved. Okay, so again, IPM is the effective and environmentally sensitive approach to pest management using all appropriate options. Okay. Okay, so we're getting ready to wrap up here, and some of you already are master gardeners. So what kinds of questions have you received that would be of interest to the group that they might also receive? Can we just have a little bit of audience participation here? We already heard a couple of instances about answers I guess the callers didn't really like.
Well, the most common questions that we get early in the year are about lawns and how to treat, when to treat for crabgrass, when to attack dandelions, and everybody wants to attack the dandelions and so forth in the spring, and that is the least effective time to do it. You want to do it in the fall. And people don't want to hear that they have paid their lawn service to come out and put the crabgrass control on in March, and the crabgrass isn't going to germinate until May, and it has lost half of its effectiveness in the time that it's been sitting on the lawn.
Did you use different chemicals?
Yeah.
So the commercial lawn people do use different chemicals for crabgrass than homeowners have that homeowners can. So hopefully they're doing it correctly. Maybe they'll come back and do a second application.
Yeah, and it'll be really good to have the fertilizer on now too.
Well, I have a question, a dandelion question, and I don't think I'm imagining this, but when I have gone out and, with my digger and dug down, I think they come back like 3 times as thick. Is that true, or is it just my imagination?
It depends on how deep you get with your dandelion digger. If you don't get most of the root, then they can come back. But the reason that we love the soil knife that Terry talks about is that you can get, it is sturdy enough that you can get deep and you can break that root off way down low, and that will eliminate the dandelion.
How far is way down low?
3-4 inches.
Okay, well, I've got my digger that's maybe that.
You may just have had a lot of seeds in that area.
They come back though, they're weaker. So then if you hit them the second time, you might be more likely to kill. It's usually when they come back, then like several little ones come back. So then you just need to hit them again.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. So dandelion control is best in the fall and crabgrass control best in?
Crabgrass germinates at 55 degrees.
Okay.
So with soil temp. So you need to really watch crop watch. And they'll tell you what your soil temps are.
But crop watch, put soil temp at what level?
4 inches.
And your
But they'll
crabgrass
do-
is setting at
but
about
they'll-
1 inch.
But they'll do, I think they do 2 different,
Oh, okay.
2 and 4, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Double check that, but I think they do. Or they use 2.
Okay. Who else has an example of a common call that you might get from a caller that would be of
John should have plenty of them.
use? Who's John?
Ask about when you can eat your fruits and vegetables after chemicals have been in the area or been applied.
Okay.
Don't have any old Cheney Farmers Market people in here.
Okay.
Other questions, what are you wanting to ask? I can make up lots of questions for you.
What about the answer to?
Oh, what was your question?
Eating fruits and vegetables.
Oh, well,
after-
your label's gonna tell you what, your label's gonna be able to tell you what the time is that you have to wait before you can harvest.
Okay.
Your harvest intervals, yeah.
Okay. Good.
So I just have a question. I did dandelion control last fall with 2,4-D. So can I use those clippings this spring for mulch? It was in September, October. So is the 2,4-D out of it so that there's not going to be residual there to?
Okay. Because it's staying there and it's going to be, they would be able to find it if they look for it, but you're not going to have any residual killing effects from it. No, not active. No.
Okay, and for anybody who wants to cook dandelion greens, you obviously would do that before they're treated. I haven't cooked dandelion greens, but I cook purslane.
You can do nettles, whatever.
Burning nettles?
Kay Young has a recipe in her book, and I think it's pancakes. Put nettles in your pancakes.
Oh. Okay. Any other questions that you might get?
She had a good question. She said, how do you kill crabgrass? And you need to know that the crabgrass pre-emergent kills the crabgrass. It doesn't kill the seed. It kills the plant after it germinates, but before it emerges from the ground. And the post-emergent crabgrass killers are most effective when the crabgrass is young, when it's young and tender. But if you're in midsummer or in August and you've got crabgrass, you need to worry about it the next year.
Okay.
Be like the turf guys. Second tiller.
Second tiller, okay.
Apply before when it gets to the second tiller.
Oh. Thank you.
So, okay, I'll give you one. So I get to answer phones for Backyard Farmer also. And one of the things that I purposely tried one night to not give any chemical recommendations. And all anybody ever said was, what do I spray on it?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're using true IPM methods, you're actually out scouting and looking for everything before it actually gets to the point that you actually need to start really using chemicals. But I really did try, and I said if they had aphids on something or if they had spider mites on something, I'd say use a hose and spray it with a jet of water.
Mm-hmm.
And all I got was, what do I spray on it? So sometimes it's very hard to convince people of true IPM and to use the most benign application of something. But you, as master gardeners, you need to know both. So know the least invasive and the most invasive. And you usually are going to have to recommend both to them. So that's really a hard thing to study up on, especially when you start to do the Backyard Farmer phones or Ask a Master Gardener table if you're going to work at the Old Cheney Market or some of the other places where you are doing like Q&As for the public. Just be very aware that you need to tell them use a jet of water or scouting or pluck it off with your thumb or whatever. But they're most likely going to want to know what that chemical is too. And give them, remember, the chemical name. So you give them 2,4-D or Trimec. You don't give them, well, Trimec's a brand name, but or glyphosate. You don't give them Roundup or I don't know, Ortho, Weed Be Gone or whatever. So remember, you're giving them the active ingredient. So that's another tip when you're giving answers.
One of the things that I've tried to sell people on is the idea that they can dig some of the weeds. And, you know, that's a hard sell, but what my mother always said was that if you set aside and set a timer and go out and do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then go back in the house when you're done, you're not exhausted, you're not covered with sweat, and you can look forward to another time going outside and digging a few dandelions. And the second thing that is really hard to sell people is that you need to learn to love some of the weeds. You know, the dandelions are one of the few sources of nectar for the bees and pollinators early in the year. And we have bees coming out of the ground now, and they need to have that. And if you kill all of the dandelions, they don't have anything to eat. And violets have been nearly eradicated, the wild violets, and they are the major source of food for the regal fritillary. And we're going to lose the regal fritillary if we don't have some of those. And the tomato hornworm, people are horrified at the tomato hornworm. And the tomato hornworm, if you leave it alone and let it kill off eat some of the vegetation on the plant that you should be cutting off anyway, it's going to drop to the ground and it will turn into the beautiful sphinx moth and you know, the hummingbird moth. So love some of these things.
So all of you got grandkids, pretty much? So pay them a penny a weed. I mean, come on. I mean, make them start earning their keep. Okay, maybe we're up to a nickel now. So inflation, we're up to a nickel. So
Okay. I don't have much more than this. I think you guys do a great job. I've called Backyard Farmer myself and maybe talked to one of you.
We gave you the right answer.
Yes?
I would like to plug this book on the back of the pamphlet, Weeds of the Great Plains. This is a really good deal in the book. It's got all kinds of information on native and invasive. It's got like what the natives use the plants for. It has toxicity. It has all kinds of information, but that's a great book for $25.
Good.
It's printed locally.
Good. Okay. Again,
I have one question. The little book from Five Rivers Weed Management Area, it lists Dame's Rocket. And Dame's Rocket was planted recently by the Department of Roads on the roadside. So I'm stunned to find Dame's Rocket in here as a weed that we need to get rid of.
Weed is the eye of the beholder.
yes, is it a pest?
No,
It's
it's
pretty-
not noxious.
Yeah, it's kind of invasive, but it's usually so pretty that it doesn't matter.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you all for your attention and good luck with this growing season. It's a wonderful service that you provide, and maybe I'll be talking to one of you soon.
Thank you.